Easy, how are we?
Shawnee, people are going to be glad to hear that because we didn't do the intro last week. We were under pressure.
You know what?
You were
I'll
under
take.
pressure.
I'm
You
under.
were. I
I'm under
wasn't.
severe pressure. I would take full responsibility for that. I was
And
going
you
to tell
will.
you the big story about why like last week was just a complete clustermuck for me. But I'll end. I get straight to the finish on it. Big bang in the truck. Didn't know what was going on. Checked everything. Kept looking underneath the car down for that. No lights. All the rest. And long story short, I'm about to come up that big massive hill by the Phoenix Park, Locker Room Hill, and I look back and I thought it was like the wheel arch or something was gone, and I just see the nuts go poof off the wheel, and the wheels start going side to side. And I'm like, oh, my wheel's falling off the truck. Brilliant.
No way.
Swear to God. So it's just like I was only just passed the DOE 2 weeks ago. I was like, oh, the wheel's coming off. Thankfully, at the time there was no traffic, and I just came up to a driveway. And as the wheel came off, and this is where blind luck comes in. I'll show you the picture. I'll put up a something on Instagram so that people can see it. As the wheel came off, the truck fell on the wheel. So one of the treads landed on the alloy and held the whole thing up.
Oh my God, you.
5 minutes before that, I was on the
Johnny.
M50. That was it. Truck gone, everything. Instead of just
Here,
needing
doesn't
to
it
tighten
just show
nuts.
you the old DOEs and NCTs? They're a load of shit.
Do you know what? It's when you're made aware of something and you don't notice it until something happens, and you can't help but notice it now.
Yeah.
So went down to the local tire place and they told me, look, after the DOE they put in new shocks, they mustn't have tightened the nuts because there's no way this has happened. I picked up 3 nuts off the road, and like the people that came to like tow the truck away because I couldn't jack it up because it was at an angle, it would have just fallen on me. So they literally put the back of the truck underneath it, used the ramp to lift it up, put the wheel on, tightened with 3 nuts I found the road, and literally drove the truck onto the thing to be towed away, like the tow truck. But there's a sign beside it that says after 30k, tighten your nuts. So if you're getting your wheels done for whatever reason, tighten. Easy now.
Keep a straight face, John. Keep a straight face.
Make sure your nuts are tightened, yeah. But yeah, no. So they're pretty unlucky to have the wheel fall off your car, but you're pretty lucky to have the wheel fall off, the car land on the wheel, and the only damage is that only one of the treads snapped. Apart from that, everything else is grand. So seemingly, I was told it was drivable again.
Has a silver lining.
So yeah, between that, and I had to start with that because I'm not doing any running. The only other bit of news is that we are lucky enough, the both of us, to be invited to the Mansion House for Jared Copeland's movie there during the week. You couldn't make the travel arrangements from Mozambique to there, so I ended up going instead. Mozambique. So myself and Neve went, and we met Jared, and Neve introduced herself as the better half. And without missing a beat, Jer was like, that's what Eric does in the podcast as well. Introduce himself as the better half between us two. I'm like, cheers, Jer. But yeah, no, there's a good 100 plus of us in the Mansion House. I've never been there now to see
fabulous,
see his movie.
isn't it?
And it's deadly. It's really cool. Really cool the room we're in, and seeing all the different surname badges and stuff like that, and all the pictures up of all the different Lord Mayors on the different walls and all the rest. It is. I do always forget with Jer, especially because we joke on the podcast about, like, not joke, it's fact. He lapped me and done a D doing the 50k, and we got in a little over 3 hours on Dublin Marathon, 3:06 I think it was, and he beat both of us in the Dublin half marathon. That, like, he's not recovered. Because and the other 13, 14,000 people that beat you that day as well.
If I was brave enough, you wouldn't have made the start line.
But we'll link that video in the description. But it's just like just seeing everything he's going through and just how bad he was feeling after Dublin Marathon, and just it's a weird one because it's very hard to articulate. He was talking about it that. He doesn't get anything through disability or anything like that because he's told he's not disabled enough, yet he can't do his job and stuff full time anymore. And like, you see people taking advantage of the system, and he went and did it the right way, and yeah, he can't get any of that kind of stuff. Like there's a few different sides to the movie, and just seeing how much he's struggling and stuff that was taken away from him over something so simple, like we have in the podcast where he had the skiing accident, got up, ran a race a couple of days later, and he came back home. And like, had he after the accident, had he just laid there, he would have got covered by insurance and all the rest. But the insurance company were like, oh, we don't know. It was definitely through skiing that happened, even though it was through it. Like he never got any insurance claims or anything like that through it, and it's
Yeah.
just. Yeah, it's a real shit one in that respect. Like, I wish I was more articulate in what I want to get across there, what I'm saying
Yeah, I
there.
suppose what it is we see the humor, and Jer has great humor, and we see the fun, and we see the can-do attitude, and
Mm,
that masks or is the fog amongst the reality of how difficult it is. And that's the double-edged sword of being such a great personality, but also dealing with all these problems. You make problems look so easy when in actual
yeah.
fact, it could break certain people. You know, it could tear apart families in some aspects because of the challenges. So I think that he takes it so much in a stride. People just go, fair play, Jerry. You know, like
Yeah.
it's in that kind of sense, and the realization is good. And there was the documentary and the videos and stuff are online, aren't they?
Yeah, so it's up on YouTube now. We'll link that in the show notes, so you'll get to see the full documentary online by clicking the link in the description. Yeah, it is a must watch. So anyone listening, do give it a look. Somehow switching gears from there, this week is the Anglo Celtic Plate is coming up, the 100K competition between different nations, and we originally had John O'Regan on the podcast to promote that, but then we looked into all the stuff we'd done. It was like, hang on a second, pal. There's a lot of runs, a lot of events you've done. Like, this man has done marathons in all 7 different continents. It's like, you're not getting in this podcast. Just talk about this event. There's a lot of stuff you've done that we want to get covered. So it's a long one, but a great episode coming up today for you.
Yeah, it's a really good one, and that is our cue to kind of let this episode run because it is a long one, but full of good information, full of good insights and different perspectives. A great episode, a great athlete once again, and something that we hope you enjoy this week.
With that said, it's this week's episode of the Any Given Run Day podcast. Let's go. Our next guest on the Any Given Run Day podcast is an international ultra runner who has represented Ireland on the European and world stage in the Anglo Celtic Plate, 100-kilometer championships, and World Trail Championships. He is a multiple-time Irish 24-hour running champion and has also run a marathon on 7 continents, not countries, continents, running in every type of climate and terrain imaginable. He is on the advisory panel with this Athletics Ireland for ultra running and is the host of the No Finish Line podcast. John O'Regan, welcome to this week's episode of the Any Given Run Day podcast. How are you getting on?
Well, delighted to be here. Thanks for having me.
Sean, that intro was so complex, like watching Sean read a Harry Potter book.
Do you know what?
Yeah.
I should have read Cat in the Hat.
Yeah.
John, you've done a hell of a lot. What do you think of park runs and a 5K?
I love parkrun. Well, I haven't done it in quite a while because I found that I always try to go too hard and needing a bit of extra recovery kind of has a knock-on effect then on my long run the next day. So I also feel that I'm more sleep deprived than training deprived. So I'd like to try and get a lie in at least one day a week, and that has turned out to be a Saturday. But I would recommend parkrun to anybody looking to get involved in running as a sport.
We always say in this podcast, you know, me and Sean, given the choice, will we do a marathon or a 5K best effort? We always lean towards the side of marathon. Clearly, you've got into the ultra side and have hit that sweet spot in terms of ultra running. But we always like to take a look back at where it started for you. What was that transition from your park run-esque 5Ks to ultra
No,
running?
they were never on the agenda. There was no 5Ks, there was no marathons. It was straight into the ultramarathon. Had a few
You didn't
friends who
even
were
do it? Oh my
no,
God.
hadn't even, and I had no intention of actually running a race. I had some friends who were training for Dublin Marathon back in 2001. They were mentioning it to me, same as I interested, but again, no interest. Then I bought a book called Survival of the Fittest by Dr. Mike Stroud. And the reason I bought that book was because it mentioned a guy called Ranald Fiennes who I had an interest in to his Arctic exploration. And after reading that book, I could see there were more reasons to run than there were not to run. And he mentioned a race in that book called the Marathon des Sables, which is on at the moment. I think there's 30 Irish competitors over in the Sahara Desert in Morocco now at the moment doing that same race. So I read about a chapter in that race, and then I remember seeing it on Eurosport. But after reading the book, it let me see that ordinary people can do these. You just need to do a bit of training, pay your money, sign up, and go over. So I made inquiries about the race, found out that it was very easy to get into. There was no special requirements. And I told the guys, yeah, I want to try and do the Dublin Marathon, see if I can cover that distance and see if I like it. That was it.
I'm looking at the distance in front of me. Can you tell listeners how long this Marathon des Sables is? And I was unsure how to pronounce that, so I'm glad you said it first.
Yeah, it's 246 kilometers. Now, at the time, it sounded daunting at the time, but I didn't really, have any understanding of running and marathon running. So I taught myself, well, before I actually declare to the world that I'm going to do this, I'll see if I can run a marathon distance. And the next day, if I feel like I still want to do it. So when I went running the marathon, I didn't kill myself during it. And I always had it in my mind that this was just a stepping stone. And the night after finishing, the day we finished it, we had arranged to go out that evening. And I had done up a small booklet for all the guys who I was training with. And I said, this is the reason I did the marathon. Anyone interested in joining me for this race? So they were all interested in signing up, and then they all dropped out.
At what stage that evening when you were having
About 5
if you're having
pints.
a few pints deeper, like, here's the idea, and they're like, yeah, we'll do
Well,
it. The next morning they woke up, they're like, no.
well, I said it to them before the drinking started because
Okay.
I didn't want it to become drink talk,
Yeah.
and I was quite serious about what I was planning on doing. So I didn't want them making a joke out of it. And when I was talking, and I could kind of see there's a bit of bravado going on, and I just thought, we saved this conversation for another day.
Hmm.
And we did have that conversation another day. They had a chance to think about it. They were all going to sign up, and as I said, and then bit by bit they dropped it. One guy asked me could I put it off till the following year, but I said no because there'll be something else then.
Tired, aching muscles, and overworked feet?
Discover Ultra Pure Ice Cold Menthol Gel, your instant, fast acting, and cooling savior.
Powered by menthol and boosted by arnica, rosemary, eucalyptus, and peppermint essential oils, it's a powerhouse of natural recovery.
Massage Ultra Pure Ice Cold Menthol Gel into your legs, arms, back, neck, shoulders, or our personal favorite,
Hey, easy, Sean.
feet, and feel the instant cooling sensation.
Grab a tube today. Your body will thank you.
Proudly made in County Mayo by an Irish-owned, award-winning family business, Ultra Pure blends quality, care, and value into every product.
Available in pharmacies and health stores nationwide or shop online. Find out more at ultrapurelabs.ie or on our new website, anygivenrunday.com. Now, let's get back to this podcast.
So, if this race is on now, we're talking 6 months or so from Dublin Marathon to this race? That jump.
Yes, but no, I wasn't being anyway foolish. Now I could have signed up for it then, but I gave myself a full year to train for it.
Okay.
And in that time, I started to educate myself on running. I bought a couple of books and I signed up for a course in Trinity on exercise. It was called Maximizing Performance and Monitoring of Training and Sport. And I got to know the guys then in the sports lab, got my lactate tested, and got some advice on diet, nutrition, and all that. I went in there, I was 86 kilos. I think it was about 18% body fat. And in the space of the year, they told me that my body fat was nearly getting too low. I got down to about 8%, and my body weight dropped down to around 73 kilos. So things started to change. And I kind of felt that I was getting somewhere with the running. I was starting to enjoy the process, but I didn't have anything planned for beyond the Marathon des Sables. That was it. So when I come back from that, I just stopped training. That was it. Forgot about it. So I was back to square one then.
When you look at that, obviously you take on your first marathon, you survive it, and then you say, right, this is on for me. Even when you got there, obviously there's the mentality behind this. When you got to that start line, you're in a desert now. It's very different to the Phoenix Park.
It was
and you're
lonely.
like,
yeah.
right, this is it. What was that feeling at that start line and going through a race like that? Because it's something a lot of people haven't been in that environment. They haven't seen this kind of environment. What was that like, particularly through the night?
It was very strange, first of all, when you arrive in the desert, because you're expecting to see all these flowing sand dunes, but it was like a barren waste ground. And I felt that I might have been ripped off here. This is not what I signed up for. And it was a
Disney,
strange
give me
experience.
money back.
Yeah, and then we were camping out in these bearable tents, and I enjoyed that. but maybe 2 days before you really got to see what the desert was. Now, I was, quite comfortable in the outdoors. Like I that would have been one of my kind of pastimes before I got involved in running. I spent a lot of time in the outdoors. I did a bit of training with Ray Mears, who I know from TV. I traveled with him a little bit. So I kind of liked that side of it and liked the camping. So nighttime was quite cold. Daytime was very, very warm, as you'd expect. So it was quite a mix. You had to know how to manage yourself. So if anybody's thinking of going doing a race like that, the training is only a part of it. You really have to get some experience at campcraft and how to manage yourself, how to be hygienic in those situations.
I've seen Sean on a 5K about his hygiene. I don't know how he'd survive 250. So what kind of days are we talking about for this race? Or because we're looking at people doing 24-hour races now, setting some serious records. There's people setting records on treadmills now over 3 days, up well in advance of 200K and possibly more. What kind of, obviously in the changing environment, how many days can you expect to be this? And what are athletes doing now?
Well, with the marathon they have, it is quite doable. It's like we just said about a 5K or a marathon. It's all down to the intensity. A 5K can be tougher than a marathon if you're going all out. With a marathon, you kind of relax into it. The longer the distance, the slower the pace, you kind of ease back a little bit. But the guys who are up at the front of a race, the marathon, they said, they're the ones who are suffering. So you make it as hard or as manageable as you want. So it is quite a manageable race. They're quite generous with the cutoff times. You could actually walk the race if you wanted. But they have like a sweeper van comes behind you, which is two guys with their camels, and they're walking to make sure that nobody gets lost. So it's all down to how you manage yourself during the race. But you have to be able to ration out your energy expenditure and to compare it with a 24-hour race. We had one on the track there just recently,
Mm.
and you can see when the race started that a lot of guys just go off hard, and the guys who are towards the back, you kind of see that the experience sits towards the back. And as the race starts to progress, you start to see that the guys at the back are starting to overtake the guys at the front, but they're not really overtaking us. The guys at the front are starting to fall back. The other guys have maintained a more even pace. So they're operating at a really, really low intensity and they're kind of conserving their energy and it's less stressful. And then, of course, when you see in the beginning, you might be doubting yourself about your pace, but then when you see the guys starting to fall back, you kind of get a bit of confidence, and you get to know that what you were doing was right. So that's where the good mental side that comes into these things a little bit. But I think it's down to the intensity that you actually put into the effort, the volume that you're doing, whether that's time or distance, and the other is the intensity, and that's the actual effort that you put into it. Like a 100 meter sprint, if you're doing a 100 meter sprint, you're not going to go much further than 100 meters. That's it.
Is this talking from experience, John? As in, I know you've
It's
done
all
it back in
experience,
2010,
yes.
but was there a time like me and Eric talked about our first marathon and it was absolutely horrific and stuff like that? When you got into 24 race and stuff like that, did you when and you were in Trinity and everything else, did you know straight away set pace or the first time you went out and you approached 24-hour race is a lot different
Yeah.
how you approach the subsequent races?
Yeah, well, I talk to people. I get advice, but before I went to the Martin des Sables, it was harder to actually get in touch with people then because the internet was only in its early days. I got in touch with people who had finished the race, but I also got in touch with people who didn't finish the race. And I asked them what did they think went wrong for them and what would they change to improve the chances the next time. The ones who finish, they don't always do that kind of root cause analysis to see why they were successful. So they don't know, and it could have been a fluke. They mightn't be able to. They mightn't repeat it the second time. But the guys who have invested so much time and effort, maybe a year, 2 years, into this one week, and if something goes wrong, they will know what the issue was, and then try not to let that same mistake happen again. So I learned from those, and I found that when you acknowledge the guy who took part and didn't get to the finish, they were very, very happy to kind of share their experience because in some ways they can be involved with somebody else's success. I think just because they didn't do it, it doesn't mean that they couldn't do it. And they're kind of getting an opportunity then to achieve success through somebody else. So, and then when my first marathon, I was asking people what would be a good time to finish in. 4 hours seemed to be the standard, so I went out to run 4 hours. I did a couple of seconds over it. Second marathon was in Belfast in May of the following year. I think I finished in 4:17. And then I ran in Longford. I kind of went backwards again. And then I started getting really into the training. And then I went from 4:17 to 3:17. and then 3 hours and then under 3 hours. And then, of course, 3 hours, the 3 hour marathon pace just became kind of a standard training run. But that's all down to how you approach the training. And I've picked up a few injuries, but when I pick up any kind of an injury, I accept it and I say, but that's not going to happen to me again. I kind of try to learn from it, and I just don't repeat the same mistakes.
I would have a lot of questions based on that, because obviously I've done the slower, longer, just stay in the game kind of element, and now I'm in the position where I'm like, how do I get faster again? And that's where I'm looking to kind of work on the 5Ks, 10Ks. Obviously, you were doing it over marathon distances. What kind of shift in training do people need to look at when they're looking to, like, because a 4:17 to a 3:17 to 3 hour, they are huge differences in terms of the ability to carry yourself around 42K. What was the major shift, or what was the psyche, or the if you're talking about your key training sessions, what are the key differences you made?
Well, first of all, I say don't force it. Don't just focus on the destination. It's the process that gets you there. And we were talking about like improving your 5K, improving your 10K times. If you're focused specifically on improving your 5K time to get better at the marathon, I would prefer it to be having the 5K time improving as part of the process of training for the marathon. So I wouldn't specifically focus on 5K or 10K. I was going to let them happen along the way. Otherwise, they kind of interfere with the process. Maybe in an off season, you could focus specifically on one of them, but not during a marathon training program. They're kind of less than they're performance indicators. That's how I would look at them. But key sessions I would have done for the marathon would have been about the tempo run, which I found very important, and I would do that. A very very similar session every week, but it's 2Ks of a warm up, 6K at what will be my tempo pace, and I have that as a separate block. I don't have my watch lapping every kilometer. I have a 2K as a warm up, then I have a 6K as the tempo block, and then have maybe 2K as a cool down. Now with that 6K in the middle, I would have a look at average pace for that and average heart rate. So I do it in a controlled environment, somewhere like a track. As I start to improve my fitness, you should then, be able to run faster, be able to run stronger. But instead of doing that, I still stay within the same pace. And I look at the evidence of my fitness being the reduced heart rate. Because if you keep trying to get faster and faster, you're not kind of using your fitness relative to a marathon training plan. Or you'll find that you have to be kind of get more comfortable at your training paces, and then they all kind of feed into each other then. So to me, maybe a typical week would be I look at a session that will support me from the waist down. I look at a session that I'm going to feel from the neck to the waist. So that's where it's kind of working my fitness. And then a session that's going to work me from the neck up. That's something that's going to challenge me mentally.
Looking to recover faster,
Yep.
train harder,
Yep.
and perform better?
And then what?
Perform Nutrition is one of Ireland's leading sports nutrition brands with a number of great tasting protein powders, a range of vitamins, as well as other supplements such as creatine. All products are made in the GMP facility in the west of Ireland, and they have a range of batch tested and informed sports certified products. Perform is trusted by a number of Olympians, High Rocks champions such as Sean Noble, he was in the podcast.
Yeah, right, he was.
Also CrossFit Games athletes such as Emma McQuaid and many more. Perform's goal is to offer the highest quality, best tasting nutrition products for competitive prices, and now you can get an extra 25% off all products with the code AGR on their website, performnutrition.com.
25%. I'm typing it in now. And don't forget, we are supporting Irish companies. You are supporting this podcast by listening to this advert. So support Irish, get behind your podcast and get behind your local businesses. And until then, let's get back to the podcast.
I have never heard a training block being described so simply and make so much sense all at the same time. And in particular,
fitness.
Yeah, in particular about enjoying the fitness, enjoying the fact that you've gotten to live. Because a lot of the time when we look at heart rate training or we look at various, it's like, oh, I should be going faster now because I can get the extra few beats per minute. That's an extra couple of seconds. I never, in any of the years I've been doing the heart rate training or different things, I've never just gone, well, actually, just enjoy, just enjoy being a little bit fitter and
Yeah.
enjoy the process, the
Well,
mechanism, allow the body to settle into it, I suppose. Yeah.
yes, well, I don't so much follow a plan. It's like a philosophy. Like if I'm over the track with a group, the first thing I'll generally say is, well, how are you feeling? What did you do yesterday? What do you plan on do tomorrow or maybe the weekend? Because what you do today is dependent on what had preceded it. So if you did if you were racing on Sunday and then on the track on a Monday, you're not going to be have that readiness to train at the same way. So maybe then you want to do something easier, or if you're planning on racing the following weekend, that's going to succeed the training session. So again, you have to be thinking ahead of it. So you got to know when to step forward and when to step back.
Stick with the marathon plan. They talk about the long run, the end of the week, and I want to get closer to the 2-3 weeks out right before the taper,
Yeah,
that kind of long run. There's a lot of different philosophies online. You're 30, 32K, 34, 35, maybe max before. Don't run the Jack Daniels philosophy. Don't run more than 2.5 hours before. Saw Instagram as well. You should do 39, 40K before. And then a recent one I saw was you should run to your intended time. I think it was Steve Magnus online. I could be wrong in the name. He says, so for example, if you're going for a 3 hour marathon, you should run that length in training, but obviously you won't hit near the time because you're not going as fast, but you should feel it in the legs for that long. What is your take on that long run at the tail end?
well, you might also see the term it depends, and it can be athlete dependent. Not athlete, not every athlete can handle every type of plan. And it depends on what the volume of training is that you've been doing, because the foundation of endurance sports is distance, the amount of distance that you're running per week, like the training volume. So me with 3 weeks out, I'd say be running less than 30K. But that's depending on the athlete as well. Like some might need to run less. It depends on how tired they actually are, and you might know how tired you are by doing one of your runs, like a tempo run, and seeing if it feels more of an effort for the same pace. Your heart rate is elevated. So it's a hard one to really say, and that's where having a coach or having experience is really an experiment of one. It's not going to be the same for everybody. Like a 4 hour marathon runner, it- they need to put in a high amount of, a high training volume in order to stay on the feet for as long as they are. So you wouldn't want to be running for 4 hours 3 weeks before a marathon. But if you're 240 marathon runner, yeah, you probably can afford to be running, you know, 75% of your distance, because it's not going to be eating into your recovery time.
I love
So
that.
it's a hard one to answer, yeah. And you can only do what you can recover from. And if
Mm.
you're looking at the metrics on your, so you say your Garmin watch, and that's telling you your recovery and not recovered, that's that's talking from what internals, that's based on your heart rate and your breathing, but that doesn't know how you're feeling, and on a muscular level, it doesn't know that that your calf is very very tight, that you're kind of borderline getting that bit of it doesn't know that. So you could look at that, and people tend to ignore when it says something bad, and then embrace when it says something good. So with saying I'm fully recovered, they say, well, I'm going to go out and run hard now. But you got to be. It's called being subjective or objective. Subjective is basing it on emotion and seeing something positive like that. But objective is saying, well, hang on, legs aren't feeling really really good. I haven't recovered from that long run I did at the weekend, and you got to. That's both training smart as well as training hard. Again, that's the whole cliche now, isn't it?
I do want to get into your coaching and stuff like that, but I do have to talk about 7 marathons in 7 days over 7 continents. That's a nice segue from training smart and stuff, going to a
Well,
marathon a day for 7 days and all travel. Did you do that, or is that part of the 7 continents you did?
yeah.
You
Well,
did that.
I did the seven continents twice. But the fourth,
Did you do it
the
in
fourth,
reverse the other way?
well, the first time I did it, I did it over 7 years, and I looked at trying to run the most extreme race on each continent and take in every type of environment. So I've done the most northern, the most southern, the highest, lowest. I've ran highest start line, lowest finish line, and then every type of terrain you can think of, from mountains, sand, some jungle, ice, water at the North Pole. So really just trying to take in as many extremes, just as a way of testing myself and keeping it interesting, you know.
And did this all start from that book you read about the
Yeah, well,
explorer?
it did. But if we step back a bit, I mentioned Ray Mears, he'd be, world-renowned survival expert. So when I grew up as a kid, I grew up inner city Dublin. Weekends were spent down in Wicklow. An uncle of mine used to bring me out to, for the day, weekend fishing, to get me away from what there wasn't in the inner city and around the flats. So I was away from that, and I started to get an appreciation of the outdoors and nature. I When we staying in a caravan, I started making little shelters, sleeping outside. Got to read an article by this guy Ray Mears. I sent him a letter. I got to meet him, traveled with him. I did Arctic survival training, whatever. So I had an interest, and then you know, that kind of made me want to, I suppose, get the opportunity to test my skills. And also there was the fitness element of it there with the running. So I was really, really enjoying this whole process. And then through that, if you enjoy something, you get good at it. And then I tried a 24-hour race, and then everything changed from that. Like I became a lot more competitive now.
This is like, so there's so much to get through in terms of race and stuff, and I do want to talk about what's
Yeah.
coming up later this week.
The Anglo
And it's
Celtic Plate.
yeah, we
We're
will
getting there, John.
get to
Settle
that.
down.
But
If you
what
didn't
it
do so much,
is
we would have been there 10 minutes ago.
we could spin a globe and just throw a
Yeah.
dart at it, and you've done it. Like North Pole Marathon, you talk about Everest Marathon, Inca Trail Marathon, Arctic Ultra 100. If I said to you now, your most extreme marathon, what immediately pops to your mind?
Oh, well, the toughest one for me was the one from Everest Base Camp, because I was guide
Oh
runner
my
for
God.
Mark Pollock. So Mark is totally blind. So we had to trek 10 days to Everest Base Camp. So as you're trekking to Everest Base Camp, there are breaks along the way as you're getting to the end of each day. But we were moving so slow that when we got into the stop point where we were having, a bit of respite, cup of tea and a sandwich, as we were arriving in, they were packing up to leave. So we never got any rest on any day until the day ended. And then when the day ended, I was tired from talking. Mark was worn out from trying to listen to me, and his shoulders were killing him from using the walking poles. So we had to get a break from each other at the end of each day. And after the first day, I just told myself, yeah, we're going to be challenged on this one. But then I just embraced that then, and we eventually we got to the start line, and before you
What
knew it, then we're at the finish line.
what does a marathon around base camp look like? What does it entail? Is it mostly climbing? Is it hiking? Is there a running section? What
Well,
does that entail?
we followed what is the trail into Everest Base Camp, which yaks travel along. And to a certain extent, then there's a point where they can't go any further because it's called glacial moraine. It's like a river of boulders that has fallen down off the mountain. So the race itself started just above Everest Base Camp on the Kumbu Icefall. It's where the kind of climbing starts. So when the race started, you first of all you're traveling along this glacial moraine, and then you go onto a pathway and you make your way towards the Sherpa capital of Namche Bazaar. And it took us 16 hours. By the time we got to the first checkpoint, because it was so difficult, the race had been won. So we then thought, okay, now you have to change your mindset then. So Mark was very, very competitive, but we had to say, we are now not racing against the other competitors. We're now competing against the environment. We're competing against the terrain, the weather. This is our challenge now. And it took us 16 and a half hours or so to get to the finish line. So that's the most challenging one, I'd have to say.
I don't know. I wouldn't bring Sean around Blanchardstown Shopping Centre. Everest Base Camp. It's like it's Yeah, and there's a lot that can go wrong. Let's call it a spade there. When you add in those conditions, that kind of terrain, there's a hell of a lot that can go wrong. What kind of stop gaps or safety is involved in these kind of races, or is it relying on the skills you have acquired over the years, John, in terms of survival and knowledge, that the teams are very much on their own, or it's very much individual, or are the Sherpas there to help out on the trails, or what way is it run in that sense?
Well, with these organised events, there is always that element of safety. There is that safety net, but something can always go wrong. So you can't get complacent. And we did have problems along the way. Like some of the pathways are very, very narrow. Like they didn't want us going there because they thought this was going to be too extreme for Mark. And we didn't think there was going to be an issue. Now, we did change our minds when we got off the plane and the small air runway in the Himalaya called Lukla. And we knew then that this was going to be different because we had planned how we were going to run this race and the guiding technique we're going to use, and everything just got, you know, we had to rewrite the plan, and we had to learn as we were going, and we evolved into, a new kind of a style. But because we were so far back in the race, the aid stations were gone. So there was no food or water along the way for us. We went into one or two tea houses trying to buy something. But we did have one guy that was at the very, very back, but he didn't speak English and he was going to keep an eye on us. And then it got dark, and when it got dark, of course, you're trying to negotiate the terrain as well. So it can be quite dangerous in Paris, but so there is that bit of a safety net, like that there is people around. Now, when I was doing the Inca Trail Marathon, I remember I was going through this cloud forest, which would be like, jungle type terrain. I've seen all these beautiful butterflies in the ground, and I was trying to avoid standing on them. And next thing I know, I woke up and I was on my back. I was after running into a branch of a tree that was out over the trail. So I can only assume that's what happened to me, that I ran into that and I got knocked out cold because I woke up and I was on my back. And all the first thought that came to my mind was, where am I in the race? Has anybody overtaken me? You know,
But something that's also a factor in this race, it's not just the rocks, it's not just the terrain, it's the altitude. How do you
yes.
prepare yourself for the altitude? There's a lot of people that go on the Inca trails and they get altitude sickness walking around. How do you prepare for that in a country
Now,
where the highest mountain is what, 4,500 feet?
yeah, well, no, this good question now because it allows me to talk about this. When I was at Everest Base Camp, I was moving so slow. And the trick is, if mountaineer, the technique is you rest on every footstep when you're climbing. So a mountaineer, if they're trying to climb Everest, they go up to the next camp, the next height, and then they come back down again. Then they might go up two camps and come back down to the first one. So you go high. It's like altitude training. You train high, you recover low, and you adapt. You stress the body, you rest the body, you adapt the body. When I went to Everest Base Camp, because I was moving so slow, I never suffered from any issues with the altitude sickness. So when I went over to Peru and was doing the Inca Trail Marathon, we were having acclimatizing runs. I stayed at the back, had my camera, and it was a big chunky digital camera because again, we didn't have
Not like what's there
well,
today.
actually, well, the iPhone came out in 2007 because they were talking about it when I was over in Nepal, and this was 2008. But very few people had them. I had a big camera, so I was at the back taking a few photographs. I was walking, biding my time, didn't suffer any problems. Then the day of the race, I took off at the start. I
Oh
totally
no.
acclimatized and then bashed my head. But anyway, it went well. It was a tough day, but I learned how to. I say in theory, it should work in practice, but in practice the theory doesn't always work. If you're doing it in a controlled environment, but because I was forced into an easier pace in Nepal, I got to know, yeah, this does actually work. Because people around me are suffering from the altitude. I'm not. Wasn't any issue whatsoever. And then I knew you there's no point in being the first in a training run, the climatizing run. So save yourself, just acclimatize and then save it for race day.
It's definitely one of the, I suppose, the silent killers of those kind of races. Like anyone who's gone
Yes.
skiing or anyone who's gone visiting a high up observatory in the summer where they get a chairlift. You don't realize it till you take on maybe 15, 20 steps and you
Yes.
realize how unfit it is, let alone be
Yeah.
taking on a marathon. You know, like
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Exactly. Yeah.
it's amazing. And in that, what obviously we've seen over the last 20 years, there are altitude rooms now showing up in Ireland, and you can
Hmm.
do altitude training. We have teams that are going to Kenya to do training. Obviously the science is becoming a hell of a lot more prominent, and it's there, and it's almost to the everyday man for these training
Yeah.
camps now. For you though, back then, what was your go-to to prepare for this, or was it all just in Ireland and just adjust when you get there?
Yeah. You control the controllables. So we don't have mountains that are that kind of size. So you can't train for that. So you try and arrive in the environment as soon as you possibly can to allow yourself time to adapt, whether that's in a hot environment or whether it's at altitude. But what you can do is have yourself as fit as you possibly can be. And a fit person will adapt to the environmental conditions quicker than a person who's not fit. And say if you're going to a desert environment, if you're heavy and you're carrying excess body weight, you're going to suffer because your body won't be able to cool itself down as well as it should. So if you're carrying a bit of extra fat around your waist, that's insulation. If you can't dissipate heat from there because it's been insulated, it's going to warm blood will travel to your extremities, being your hands and your feet. Gets to your feet, it can't escape because your shoes, your feet swell
Yes.
up. Hands swell up, feet swell up. So just knowing those things. So being in the best possible shape you can before you get there. You can't train for the altitude, but you can train yourself to be able to climb steep ground. I spent a lot of time down in Glendalough, and I have a couple of routes there that I would just go up and down and up and down, looking for that burn in my legs. And also, what I did down the Glendalough was before training with Mark was I'd go down and have myself blindfolded, and somebody lead me, so I was able to walk in somebody else's shoes and get feedback on what he needed to know during the race. So that way, I was kind of learning how to communicate.
Yeah, and it is one. If you, we've had a few guests talking about that, and the idea of learning and understanding is the foundation
Yeah.
of learning, I suppose, especially in a team environment like that. It's going to be part and parcel on that. When you move on to them, we've talked about kind of the ones that scared you. If I was to give you a flight ticket tomorrow, which one would you bring me and Sean to and say this is great fun?
Well, yeah. Well,
Leave us there.
if you were going to come along, then the one I would go to would be the Badwater 151 in Death Valley. That's
Oh
one I'd go to.
yeah,
But it's an expensive rate, and there's a lot involved with the logistics. So it's you need a support crew with you to actually do that, and you have to hire out a camper van. So it's expensive, but that's one. If you were going to give me the ticket and you were coming along the crew, now when I'm picking a crew, I'd be looking at characteristics first, and you have to, see what they've done and make sure that they're the right people to actually,
I
be in that van.
tell you, you wouldn't
You have
trust
to
us
make,
with
yeah.
crayons. Never
But you
mind
see,
our life.
but yeah. Well, you could certainly you give me the flight ticket. So, you have to be because you have to be able to detach yourself then from the responsibilities of what a crew does. So if you're going somewhere with a crew, you can't be the crew, and you can't be telling people what they're all to do, what they're already doing.
Yeah, and I suppose brain power after a certain amount of time, particularly in bad water, the
Yeah.
heat, the distance.
Yeah. So if we get a sponsor, the three of us
Yeah,
can go and
if
do that
anyone's
one.
listening, I'll drive the van.
Yeah.
Sean will make the
Yeah.
tea. John will do all the hard
Yeah.
work.
We do a relay.
John, from all the racing stuff you talk about, one thing is very apparent is how much you study and ask questions and prepare yourself for these races from the get-go. Definitely a coach's mindset. When you were doing all these races back then, were you a coach then that led towards Athletics Ireland, or did this come later in your running career?
No, I didn't look to be a coach. I kind of drifted into it. I just happened to be running locally, went past a grass track, and I was called over. One of the coaches said to me, see you running around. Would you interest doing a bit of coaching and that? So I just got involved with the kids. But if we step back from that, I was involved in martial arts for a long time, and I was a martial arts coach and instructor. Now, to become a martial arts instructor, it's not like what happened to me there with becoming a
Yeah,
running coach,
just
where
rock
I
up.
was asked to do something. Yeah, you have to playing from the beginning. You start off as a beginner. You have called a shosha in the beginner's mind, and you have to be open to learn. And in order for you to progress through the rankings, you have to be able to teach. That's called pedagogy, being able to pass on what you know. It's a style of teaching. So that's part of your progress into moving up the grades. So you will not get to become what's called a black belt, Shodan being the first one. You will not achieve that unless you are able to pass on what you know. But that again is a test of knowing, truly knowing something that you should be able to explain something that's quite technical to your granny or to a child. So you learn how to teach. You're going to learn how to coach. So then when I got involved with the running, it was training with the kids, and then I would do my own training after their session. Some of the parents would ask me, is there an adult group? And I said, no, but you're more than welcome to run with me. So that started to grow and grow. And then all of a sudden, I had a group of about 20. We went for a bit of a run one evening, and someone tripped and fell. And then it was mentioned, look at, insurance wise, you can't really be doing this if you're some way connected with the club, so you have to make it a bit more formal. And then the running group became more formal. And then I more or less, switched from being I think if you strip anything back, the fundamentals are all the same. I just had to get the specifics of how to, teach somebody how to run and prevent it from getting injury, pass on some of my own experience, some of my own advice, but I also brought across the philosophy I had from the martial arts training. So I tried to educate myself as much as I could on running and coaching, and did a few courses. But I also hooked up with some other coaches, like Phelim Kelly from the Dublin Track Club. I contacted him last year. I asked him, would you mind if I went along and just watched what you do, just kind of sit in with you? And I've done that with other coaches. I've often gone up and watched a GAA team training and sit in with them. And I've actually trained a couple of GAA teams as well, like just with running technique. And that's it. Whenever I kind of see kind of a sporting opportunity, maybe a tennis club, I just look at how the coaching is done. And because coaching is more than just blowing a whistle and telling somebody what to do. It's not just telling them what to do. It's helping them to do what they need to do, giving them that kind of easy explanation, not complicated. So only saying something when it needs to be said, not just talking for the sake of talking.
And also the element of instilling belief in people as well. And one thing
Exactly.
about that is
That's a big thing. That's a big thing.
seeing
Yeah.
is believing. And when they're seeing their coach taking on the Himalayas and everything else, there's seeing and
Yeah.
believing of
Well, I'm also a bit conscious of that because it can be intimidating to somebody in the beginning, and I don't kind of like that, so I don't talk about it too much. I do what I do, and then I try to move on. But what I have found with some people is that they come along to the track, and like you said, it's having a bit of belief. They want to get better, but they're not interested in competition and being competitive. But they say they're not competitive, but everybody is competitive. It's just that they lack that self-belief. Like if you do the lotto, you're competitive. If you go along to watch your kid's football game and you want a team to win, you're competitive. If you follow a team, you're competitive. But it's with yourself. It's that lack of belief. So helping somebody to win, and that becomes contagious. And then they kind of, become a bit more confident, and they won't be afraid to maybe go along and do a race because they know nobody's looking at me, nobody's judging me. And it's about them being something better than they were previously. But to do that, you have to be some way competitive, even if it's you against you.
When you're, for example, you started this podcast, you talked about going down to 24-hour race there the other weekend in League Slip. Going from all these extremes and all the challenges you face during races, and like you've done 24, you've been 2 times back-to-back national champion in a 24-hour race. To go down
Four
and watch
times.
that. 4 times back. Right, my notes are wrong. Websites need to be updated. I've won distance now. I'm not going to say in case it's not the longest shit done. When you go from that then straight into, I assume you weren't running the race in 24-hour, right? So just
Yeah.
not just watching it, but like how
Yes.
much of it is different than a mindset shift is that? And you can't get the same kick out of it, right? Or coaching's different, or
Yeah, well, it is difficult, but when I was looking at them running at the weekend, I'm thinking, that's it. It is. mad when you think about it. Like to be able to go for that length of time, and you're going to forget that you could do it. That you could do it yourself. Now, the first time I did it, I just heard of these races, and I just thought it was normal. Didn't know, what the extremes of these things were. And actually, it was Ian Keith had said to me that a good distance to do in this race will be in this 24 race will be 220 kilometers. So I set about a plan, and I did 220 kilometers and 21 meters. So that's how exact it was with the pacing and all that. But to me, I was looking at it, well, this is an opportunity to kind of challenge my mindset, challenge the mental side of it. But I had that hunger in the early days, but there on Saturday, but that same hunger isn't there. The same thing with the winning the national championships. The first time you do it is great, but then the second time you feel like either you're defending it or people just want to beat you. And it just wasn't the same the second time because I didn't really need it, but I felt I had to be there. And I kind of didn't want to not turn up. I wanted somebody to beat me, rather than just not show up at the race. But it didn't have the same buzz at the end of it because yeah, well I've done it before, like so, and it's kind of expected in
What
of
about the
some
fourth
people.
one though?
Well, here's the thing for you, right? With the Donadea 50K,
Yeah.
I was part of the first group of people that ran that, the invitational group. There were 19 of us or so. And over the next few years, it started to fizzle down to eventually there was only one person left, and that was me. So I ran that race as the last person, and then the following year I didn't do it because I said I'm not going to be that person that feels they have to do it every year. And with the 24-hour race up in Belfast, I didn't do it then again. I did the 12-hour race as a guide runner. And I was asked by the race director, would you not do it again? I said, no, I don't. I'm still going to do the race. I'll do it next year. But I didn't want to feel that this was becoming an addiction. It says, I don't need it. I didn't want it to become something that I wasn't enjoying. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, it's kind of like Dublin Marathon every year. Once that ticket comes out, you feel like you have to do it every year. You're missing out and FOMO. Well, not that we're
Yeah,
winning these races,
yeah,
but
yeah,
it's still that element of, well, I did it last year and Sean's doing it this year,
yeah,
and
yeah. Well, it is a
it's
great
a
buzz.
it's a very
Mm.
different feeling, I suppose, when
Yeah,
you're winning these things, and then it's like defending champion back again and defending their title, and
yeah,
everyone like that, everyone's seeing who can beat you. It's from your perspective, and you've told it so well. Do you know what? It's nice to take a step back and let someone else have that feeling, and then next year it's game on. Like
yeah.
it's a nice way to look at it. And I don't know how long an ultra runner's career is, John. Maybe you can enlighten us how long of a career we can get out of. But there's obviously a time that you're at your peak, and then a time when it's time to let others and just pick and choose me races, and I suppose move more into the coaching and the watching side, which we're going to look at as we look towards some of the bigger events that you're working towards this year.
Yeah, well, it's hard to say how long that kind of career can be because if you look at a guy called Eddie Gallen, he's ran 46 24 races. He was running at the weekend. He's in his 60s, and he set an age group record, beating his previous age group record for someone in M60. He ran 211 kilometers, I think it was,
My
and
God.
Wow.
he's still going. So then you've Ian Keith, who would have been the guy that was my main competition in the 24-hour races back in the day. But, the couple of new guys came along and they really raised the bar, but they're gone now. And the bar has been dropped a bit. So that's another story, but we're trying to improve the standard again. But Ian Keith will be late 50s and he has just finished a 300-mile race over in Arizona just this last
My
couple of days.
God.
And he does a lot of the big trail ultras and he's still competitive at them, and he's still going really, really well. So it's hard to tell really.
How big is the Irish scene now for ultra? How the ultra running scene now in Ireland? Like you talked about when you first started the Dundee 50K, it was only 19 of you, and like this past year it was a sellout and 24-hour race in the leagues. So they've ran that a good few times. They ran one last August. There's the Wexford Trail
Wexford,
Running
yeah.
Festival as well, 24-hour last year. They changed the format this year, but like I'm assuming like it used to be so few and far between now where these things pop up a lot more now. There's backyard ultras 4 or 5 times now a year. Is this and at its absolute peak now at the moment? It's growing and growing and growing. You seen it and we're getting better and better, or is it what way do you see the ultra running scene in Ireland at the moment?
Well, it is growing. That there's a lot of races. There's nearly too many races because you can't do them all. It's not like
Mm.
running a 10K where you just quick recovery. Now, the first Anglo Celtic Plate mentioned that happened in 1995, and that was over in England, and we had three male athletes, one female athlete running that. So we did have these races back then. The first 24-hour race happened in Ireland. It was down Tullamore back in 1985, but there wasn't the demand. There were only 3 or 4 athletes in that. Again, the same girl who ran that, she ran the first Anglo Celtic Plate. So, so there's a few. There was kind of a hardcore element back then. We had some really, really good runners, I think, who didn't get the opportunity to, I suppose, shine in the same way as some of the athletes are now because it was unknown. Like there's Tony Mangan, who still holds the world record for 48 hours indoors. I think he was the only person who ever ran uh, over 200 kilometers as a 20 as his two 24-hour splits. So he ran over 400 kilometers in 48 hours. That's
Oh my
in a
God.
world record, and that still stands. And yeah, we had the Anglo Celtic Plate started back in 1995, and we had teams taking part in these races back then when nobody knew about them. And the first I heard of the Anglo Celtic Plate was 2009. It happened in Galway. But Richard Donovan, he took over the ultra running to try and inject a bit of money into it and trying to get the team more professional. And coincidentally, Anthony Lee was at that same race, and that's where we met. Well, we went to school together, but we were in different years. But he recognized me from that race. We got chatting. We did that race. And then it was soon after that, I think around 2009, when Richard Donovan was found Ultra Running Ireland, that then ultra running started to pick up a bit then. But then it got taken over by Athletics Ireland in 2012, I think it was. And it just wasn't funded in the same way. So there was kind of a bit of a dip in performances. The Anglo Celtic Plate wasn't supported in the same way, and it's only now that I think with last just before COVID, we had a lot of runners that were running beyond 240K in 24 hours. The women were getting close to 220, but then COVID kicked in, things went a bit backwards. So we're now trying to progress it, but the Donaghadee 50K has gone from strength to strength. And the unusual thing about that race is it didn't set out to be a race, and it didn't set out to be as big a race as it is. It just evolved. It was the right kind of an atmosphere. And it started to, because there weren't a lot of events on, this was an opportunity for people to, you know, try an ultra distance race. And yeah, it has just grown. It's one of the success stories. I think that's kind of feeding into some of the other stuff now.
So the one thing you did say near the start there was there's one way too many races, but you can't race them all. And the demand for these races is there a point, and just pre-COVID, come back into COVID, did you think that more people are signing up for these things now? Because like you only have so many people that are near the top end, the 220 kilometers and all that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of people that would just do these races, be doing them now that never would have dreamed of doing a half marathon. And Dublin
Yeah.
recently, 12,500 people spending 80 quid to a half marathon, with 75 quid to a half marathon. Like in your opinion, what do you see that this huge increase of demand for these races are?
Yeah, well, it's a hard one to say. Well, you know, a lot of it is commercial. There's a lot of people trying to, because it's popular and trail runners popular, just trying to make a few bob. There's nothing wrong with that. But if it kind of dilutes it, and then we don't have the same kind of quality of athlete coming through, then that now ideally it would be great to have a 100k race in Ireland, which we don't have. Like our 100k national championship last year was part of the Anglo Celtic Plate in Scotland because the best 100k runners will be over there. There's athletes from Northern Ireland. If you're part of a club in Northern Ireland, you're eligible for the Athletics Ireland National Championships. So the best runners from Northern Ireland and the best runners from Ireland will be eligible for the national championship. So because there's no race here, that's where we do it, and the same will happen again this year. But we need a 100k race. But 100k is a difficult distance. There's not, commercially there might not be a lot of money to be made in it. So it's harder to get somebody to actually put one on, and you won't get as many people kind of interested in that. A trail race of 100 kilometers, 200 kilometers might seem a bit more attractive because of the scenery and all that, and everything else that goes with it. It's kind of trail running is a bit more trendy, but you're not going to get somebody who's at the standard to be representing that European and world level. And really, to grow the sport, we need to be competing on a world stage. We have some fantastic athletes, but we don't have teams to actually allow them to shine.
Well, hopefully Anto doesn't hear 20 laps and F off now. So for doing a T for 100k, but wait, speaking of these athletes and stuff, and not the 100k races, you're on the board for picking the ACP team. Am I right in saying that?
Well, I'm the Irish rep for
Okay.
the Anglo Celtic, so I'm part of the Anglo Celtic Plate Association. So Ireland didn't have any representation as a team from 2012 to 2020, and Richard Donovan had sent one athlete over in 2012, Keith White, and he won the Anglo Celtic Plate. Another athlete went over in 2013, Dan Doherty. He won the individual race, but the Anglo Celtic Plate is a team event, so an individual can't get the plate. So we've had, and then so previous to that, as well with ultra running earlier, was Helena Crossan in 2009. She won the Anglo Celtic Plate when it was on in Galway. So we have had some success, and then we weren't supporting it from 2012 to 2020. A guy from the UK, Norman Wilson, who was heavily involved with the IAU, he was trying to resurrect the Anglo Celtic Plate and the 100k. So he got talking to me, and we started to resurrect the 100k association. So this was going on, and I was looking at hosting the Anglo Celtic Plate on the grounds of Malahide Castle, and then COVID kicked in, so it was cancelled. So then I got in touch with Anto, and he suggested Mondello Park because he also couldn't hold the Donadee 50k in Donadee, so he was looking to move it out of the park. So that has an unbreaking record that has happened every single year. So the Donadee 50k moved into Mondello, and then he allowed the 100k to piggyback off that. So the Anglo Celtic Plate Association was then formally formed in that same year, 2021. So I'm the Irish rep, and I'm also have some other involvements on it. And I would then liaise with Athletics Ireland, because ultimately it's Athletics Ireland that have to say on who gets selected. They're the ones with they control the money. Now the Anglo Celtic Plate is more a self-funded competition. It's not a major international event like a World or European Championship. It's a smaller event. Standard is lower, but they still have a say in who actually goes to represent, because they are wearing the Ireland kit. So with that comes a certain amount of responsibility that you have to prove yourself worthy of actually wearing it and taking part in this race. So although I have an involvement, I don't have the final say. So if anybody out there who has put in an application for these races and they haven't been
It's all your
selected,
fault, John.
it's all, yeah, oh no, we see that's it. That's it. But look, it comes with the territory as well. I have to, when the applications come in, I help to collate them, and I look at people's form, and I am heavily invested in the scene here, so I kind of have a fair idea. But
Well,
it's
let's look at if you don't mind, on the team that's
yeah,
selected this year, because we've had some of them have been guests
yeah,
on the podcast. We follow them on Strava. Some of your athletes that are running 70Ks quicker than I've ever ran a 5K.
yes. Now that would be Wayne Waldron, especially.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of there. He's thinking of there as well.
Yeah,
Phenomenal.
yeah. Yeah.
And when people go back and listen to his episode when they come on here, they see how far he has come in terms of a
Mm.
running career. How do you get to that? Obviously, time is a big factor in this, but to get to that level and to that belief and to have a lot of people knocking on the door, because there's a few people that are knocking on the door of this team. But what are your thoughts of this team's chances in the build up to this event, which is
Well,
very much on our door now?
yeah. But to mention about Wayne, when you said he ran 70K faster than a lot of people would run a marathon or a half marathon, he's also not running it as fast as he can run. So I'd say
Yeah.
Rain is very controlled and disciplined. And one thing I'll say about Wayne as well is he listens. Wayne is very coachable. And from my observation, he's a guy who's not controlled by an ego. He wants he wants this result in the race, but he's not doing what he's doing to be getting kudos on
The
Strava and
awards and all of that.
look at
Yeah,
me.
yeah, yeah.
This is part of the process. I was actually chatting with him today. I was chatting with him yesterday. He's very, very controlled in what he's doing. Now, to kind of get and answer your question. So we look at the what is the international B standard for the 100K, which is 7:30 for men, and I think it's around 8:30 for women. Now, in the Anglo Celtic Plate, there's very the representation by women has been quite minimal, and partly because of the distance that's involved. So in the team competition, it's now three men to score and it's two women. So that adjustment was made to try and encourage more participation, which is great. And 2021, we had the biggest ever team that we had running in the Anglo Celtic Plate because it was run locally, and there was some sponsorship from the Dundee 50K to put in we had a B team to as part of a developmental process. But what we also do with the Anglo Celtic Plate is you can qualify not just on a 100K time, because not everybody has a 100K time, but we also accept a 50K time once we know that it makes sense that this person wants to go further and we feel that they can go further. And marathon runners can also do quite well at 100K because the pace slows down and it's that much easier. But another thing, I've approached a lot of athletes, say marathon runners, 50K runners, asking them to do it. It's that old saying where boy you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink it. There has to be a want by the athlete to do it. You can't actually suppose make them do it or encourage them to do it. The most important thing is they have to want to do these kind of distances. And sometimes they feel that they can't do it, but again, can't say, can't be. You need to see other people doing these events. So that's why we kind of encourage participation in races like the 50K and try and encourage more to step up to the 100K, especially if they feel that they're kind of doing well in marathon and 50K. But there are limited opportunities at those events, very, very limited. So it can be like, say, for example, Katrina Jennings, she was hovering around 240 for the marathon. I encouraged her to try the ultra running, and she hasn't looked back since. She holds the 50K national record. She took it off one of your guests there, Sorka Loughnane. But Sorka Loughnane still holds the age group world record for 50K. She's lowered or raised the bar again. Katrina also holds the 100 kilometer Irish record, and she holds a world age group best performance of that. So we have some really, really good athletes, but they just have to be given the opportunity to actually see what they can do. And I would hope that a few more athletes would actually, step up and chance their arm with these distances. Like, as well as having the team going over, it is actually an open race as well. So if you were a member of a club here and you went over and took part in the open race, you are eligible for the national championships.
Okay. So that's where people can, the Anglo
Yeah.
Irish in the open race is where people can register
Yeah,
in 100K
and
time.
next year it could be me that's hosting the Anglo Celtic Plate next year, and I would try and encourage as much participation from club runners in that as you possibly can.
When we look at a team element, how much tactics are involved, or is it very much a race and let's see who can finish as high up as we can? When it comes to the 100K, is there some elements of team work in it, or is it very much of we all know our own jobs today, we all know what we have to do, and it's
Yeah.
your race?
Well, this can be a difficult one because the Anglo Celtic Plate is a team event. Now, we also have the national championships, which is an individual event. So it has to be a mix of the two. You always the athletes obviously want to win the championship, but you've also got to do something to bring on the team. So you've got to, I suppose, race as you've trained. Don't just get caught up in trying to beat the person with you. I would say it's always a good idea to have a look at what someone else has done and be truthful with yourself about what you can do. And you've got to know what your capabilities are. I think in a race like we're going into in Mallory Park in the UK, we're told it's not a PB course, so it's down to old-fashioned racing. So we're going to have to look at the team helping each other. I say Wayne and Kieran McGonigal, who was our national record holder, they'll be kind of evenly matched, and I will be thinking that they'll be the two who will be up towards the pointy end of the field. So I will be encouraging somebody else not to try and run with them, not to try, and especially don't try and beat them. You know,
It's definitely
and
not.
yeah, but the others to try and but that does happen. You see, it's when the gun goes off, things change. You become the hunter and the hunted, and that's what happens during these races. So you've got to kind of look at if you're the number five on the team, you've got to be thinking, well, somebody could. There's so much can happen in a race of this length that something can happen to somebody ahead of me. So you always got to try to do the best you possibly can and do it for the team. Some teams can be picked, but other teams pick themselves through qualifying standards. So they don't always get a chance to have the experience of getting to know each other and getting to see each other in training and developing that kind of relationship. So it can be a tricky one, but we will have a chat with the lads. So the girls team won the Anglo Celtic Plate in 2021, and that's the first time in the history of the event. This is its 30th year, so it'll be race number 31. We had the first one happened in 1995. So then the race number two was 1996. So this is the 31st race, and the women have won the race, the Anglo Celtic once, and which that was a very proud moment. I think for me more so than the women because you know, I probably realized how much it actually took to get that win more so than they did. They just did what they were doing, which is great. But you asked about the men's team. I think on paper we have our strongest men's team that has ever gone over to this race. But that's not saying that we have the strongest team in the competition. So we have to look at the competition. And I've been checking some of their PBs and when they happened and going back to their 50K and the marathon. And we will try and work out some kind of a game plan, the strategy, and we'll know as a support crew, we'll know who to be looking at, especially, and then we'll see that if they're having an issue, they'll start to drop back because these guys when they're on the home ground, they'll want to be doing the best that they possibly can, and they will have that extra pressure on themselves. Now you do need that bit of pressure, but we are going to have pressure, but we're going to try and control it as best we can. And I would like to come away from that competition with everyone achieving at minimum a personal best.
And that's, I suppose, when you look at it, if everyone achieves a personal best, you just have to
Yeah,
eyeball who did what on the day, and was your best the
yeah,
best.
yeah,
And
yeah.
sometimes it's as easy as eyeballing each other and just knowing whether you have it or not on the day.
Yes,
It
yeah,
can be unfortunately in sport can be as simple as that.
yeah.
It's something that is so new to us. John has done a couple of 24-hour races. It's definitely new to me. I don't know if I'll be signing up to the open race next year when you're hosting it, but I might go for a look. I might go for
Mm.
a look. I'll drive the van. But it's absolutely amazing to see how the names you have mentioned on the men's team and on the women's team are becoming names that we are seeing on social media. It's great for us to start to see these people on Strava. And like you say, if you can't see, you can't be. And there are a lot of more people really getting this interest in ultra running and understanding that sometimes it is nicer to slow down and go out and run longer. It's not all about the 5K best effort, and it definitely added a new dimension into what people see as long distance running, and it's great to have that goal.
Yes, and going slower in a longer race, it doesn't mean that it's
It's not
always
slow.
that no, and it's not always easier because you can be prolonging the agony, and it's a long time to be out there. And you would often hear people talking about ultra marathons saying, "Oh, they're a picnic with a bit of running." They're not. You have to people can overeat during these events. Again, you have to get nutrition right. A lot of the problems that would actually the main cause of people dropping out of these races is having gastric discomfort, like stress in their digestive tract, and they find it very, very hard to come back from it. And that's an overconsumption of fuel. You don't need to be taking thousands and thousands of calories. You're operating at a lower intensity, and there is, I suppose, more of an energy contribution from fats. And now you still need to be consuming carbohydrates, but the percentage of fats increases as the duration gets longer, provided the intensity is low enough. Like if you start running fast and going anaerobically, you're going to be locking those fat stores away, and you're going to be creating a demand for supplementary carbohydrate. But if you can control the pacing, and again, this comes down to training, and you've got to experience what it's like hitting those walls. You've got to get a feel for what it's like having that discomfort in your stomach. And a lot of times with the discomfort comes from people over consuming gels, thinking they need what's being mentioned, 60 grams, 100 grams. It's too much. And what your body will do will it was absorb the the water from it. And then you're just kind of left with this concentrate, and that's going to cause you problems. So it's just an overconsumption of fuel,
What's the best way people to follow along with this race coming up?
Well, I have an Instagram account, ultrarunningireland.ie, and I'll be posting up. There's a profile of all the team members on that, and I'll also be posting up a link to the event, and I'll be putting up a few bits and pieces about it. So and I try to update that with some ultra running news and stuff. So
And
yeah, maybe give a
for
look at that, the Instagram account.
your sake, I hope it's a loop course. Is it for the 100K?
It's a racetrack similar to what would have been in Mondello. So
So you have loads of time for people to go buy loads of times for stories and stuff for the updates
yes,
for
yeah.
ultrarunning.ie on Instagram.
Well, see, we'll have it. It'll be a small enough crew to deal with. We've 6 men and we've 3 women, so it will be kept going. And there's one section where it's a bit of a hill leading in towards the feed zone, where it's a straight. There's a hairpin turn and it goes back on the straight again. So we won't be feeding the athletes. We'll still see them. So we'll have to be observing them. So we will have to be switched on. And then with 9 athletes, there will always be somebody coming in. And then you're trying to take note of their times. And then you're also trying to look at where others are in the race. So to see where the other athletes are and figure out when is the time to actually push on a bit. Because you've got to know when to increase the pace, and you got to know when to reduce it. There's some chances you can't afford to take, and then there's some chances you can't afford not to take. But it's known which is which and when to do which of those.
Unbelievable, John. I just absolute best luck to the team, and I'm going to
Thanks.
struggle with this part saying there that all their names. I do want to give them all a shout out. On the men's team, we've got Kieran McGonagall from Letterkenny AC, Wayne Waldron from the Nor Harriers, Matthew Collins from Portmarnock AC, Rob Kelly from Raheny AC, Stephen Murphy from Tullamore AC, Colin McPartlin from Sleeve Gillian Runners, and the women's team then we've got Lorraine McMahon from Wexford Martin Club, Christine Kinsella from Brothers Pierce AC, and Patricia McLaughlin from Lakela AC. And I need to read more Harry Potter books to come to Eric before he jumps in on that one again.
John, it's been absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for your time. Big shout out to all those Sean has just called out. We all are wishing you the very best and hope that the day goes well for you all. We look forward to following along. We will put some of the information on where to follow into the show notes for anyone who is looking for more information and getting involved in ultra running in Ireland.
Super. Thank you.
And that's it for this week's episode of the Any Given Runday podcast with myself, John, and Eric. Take care.